I know some fans were disappointed to see that Trae Young was a go for tonight's game after he was listed as questionable earlier in the day, but honestly, and I did a whole video on this on the NBA channel, but Trae Young is one of the most overrated players in the league, and it's not just because his defense is so garbage, but it's more so the fact that he really struggles against top perimeter defenders in the NBA, and then defaults to some terrible shot selection, shooting it from the logo at ill-advised times in the game because he knows it's his only way to score. Driving on someone like Alex Caruso isn't going to be an option when he's that small. Same thing trying to do that on Dosunmu. And forget about hanging around the perimeter, not when you're as small as Trae Young, and the Bulls have one of the best perimeter defenders in the league. So for me, I was actually happy that Trae Young got the go-ahead to play tonight. Not only that, but I also feel like the Bulls sometimes take their foot off the gas a bit whenever the opposing team's best players are out of the lineup, kind of like what we saw the other night against the Cleveland Cavaliers, a game they should have easily won. And with Trae in, and with some of his decision making in the fourth quarter, that really enabled the Bulls to close this one out. But I'm not going to sit here and say that the Bulls won this game on Trae Young's incompetence. A lot of credit goes to the Bulls, who handled this game very well. After falling behind by as many as 12 or 14, I believe it was, in the third quarter, the Bulls had that terrible second quarter where the Hawks went on that 27-8 run, effectively flipping the script on the lead that the Bulls had in the first quarter. But as I've said before, throughout this resurgence that we've seen from the Bulls, they have responded well in these situations. I know it wasn't the case against the Cavs the other night, but we've talked about that one and how it was the fourth game in 6 nights. But the Bulls, rather than getting down on themselves, getting frustrated, losing focus, making silly turnovers, and committing bad fouls, they remained calm and collected, and they found themselves out of the hole by hustling and playing team basketball. And I don't think I can say enough just how big of a game this was for Andre Drummond. Like, when you lose a player like Nikola Vucevic as your starting center, which I know the sentiment around Vuce is mixed, and I'm sure there will now be guys calling for him to be benched and starting Drummond over him, but the fact of the matter is, when you lose a player like Vucevic, who is a high-level passer for his size, is great at generating offense, but can also space the floor with his shooting to go along with his elite rebounding, you lose a lot in not having Vooch on the floor. And for Andre Drummond, yeah, he has his flaws, but his biggest flaw is really getting into foul trouble, making poor decisions, boneheaded plays as I like to call them. But with Vooch being out and knowing the Bulls were going to have to heavily rely on Drummond in the paint to be focused, not get into foul trouble, not commit silly turnovers, Drummond was focused, played hard, showed effort and hustle, was moving well with the ball in the paint, and of course, crashing the boards, what he does best, being one of the best rebounders in NBA history, and no, that is not an exaggeration. For Andre Drummond to come into the starting lineup, his first start with the Bulls, because Vucevic played all 82 games last year and every single one so far this season, to have him come in, put up 24 points, 25 rebounds, 10 offensive rebounds alone to give the Bulls all those second chance points and opportunities, as well as 3 steals and 2 blocks. I mean, that's the kind of stat line you see a few times every season across the NBA. Just a dominant performance from Andre Drummond, really proving that he still got it. The all-star Drummond from his Pistons days. Now, whether Drummond would be able to sustain this kind of play consistently over time is another thing, but I do think it says something that if you let Drummond out, you give him more minutes, more opportunity, he's still a great traditional big man. And I hate to say it because I actually love Andre Drummond, but if the Bulls are still wanting to go the retool route, a game like this really helps that trade value for Drummond, who, as we said before, is arguably one of the best backup bigs in the NBA. And after seeing him tonight, you could even make a case that he could be a starter on some NBA teams that are in need of that type of role. I mean, we'll see where things go over the next few weeks as we get closer to the trade deadline and what the Bulls will ultimately do, but it's yet another player who is bumping up that trade value for the Bulls. Now, knowing that Vucevic was going to be out, you obviously had to think more offensive load was going to fall on DeMar DeRozan, especially with no Zach Lavine as well, of course. But what was rough was seeing DeMar DeRozan struggle in that first half. Same with Coby White, actually. But DeMar completely turned things around in the second half and ultimately took over in the fourth quarter and just killed the Atlanta Hawks. I didn't like some of the shots that he took late in game, but they went in. Dude was locked in and wanted this win. And that final play, that isolation up and under on Jalen Johnson, was a thing of beauty, just so smooth, so crafty, and it ended up being the dagger to seal the game. DeMar, despite the slow start, still finished the game with 25 points on 8 for 17 shooting, 6 assists as well. Coby White, I mean, dude still has been really struggling shooting the 3 ball. Hasn't hit a single 3 in his last 2 games. 0 for 7 tonight, 0 for 8 in his last game. Pretty brutal, but even going cold from deep, he still managed to find ways to be active in getting to the basket, getting the foul line. He finished the game still with 19 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists, only 1 turnover as well, and was a +7 on the night. And then for Alex Caruso, I mean, you just can't say enough about how great he's been in late game situations for the Bulls. Struggled shooting the ball, but hit a big three with less than 2 minutes to go when it mattered most. Got a big steal coming out of the inbound play, and then of course what really sealed it, because then DeMar had that great ensuing play on the offense on the other possession, but causing that turnover by DeJounte Murray, drawing that charge. Just cannot say enough about his effort and how key he's been for the Bulls in this stretch. And then finally, Dosunmu, who has just been so solid for the Bulls off the bench on both ends of the floor. Everyone likes to make fun of that Tony Snell stat line the other day, but he's been really good for the Bulls this season and having a great season overall. 19 points tonight for Ayo. He also hit a big three in the late game, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, and 3 steals. He finished with a team high of plus 11 on the night. And as I've said before, that contract is starting to look more and more like a steal with every passing game. You know what's crazy is the Bulls still managed to win this game, shooting 7 for 25 from 3. They only took 25 threes compared to the Hawks' 45. But the Hawks shot just as poorly as the Bulls did from behind the arc at 28%. That enabled the Bulls to out-rebound the Hawks by a wide margin, in large part thanks to Andre Drummond. And hey, the Bulls continued to take care of the ball. Only 8 turnovers again tonight while forcing 15 to the Hawks. That is a big reason for why the Bulls are able to hang around in these games even when they're not shooting the ball well. But anyway, the Bulls get the win, a needed win. They create more separation between them and the Hawks in the standings, still sitting 10th in the Eastern Conference, but now a full game ahead of the Hawks. Big game on Thursday where they'll take on the Pacers at the United Center, who are right in front of them in the standings, currently sitting 8th and 2.5 games ahead of the Bulls. The Pacers have been struggling as of late. Let's see what the Bulls can do before they play their final game of the calendar year at home against the Sixers. Let me know what you guys thought of this game. As always, be sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.